So I will try to answer to the questions that were put forward by the organizers while I'll go through my slides. First of all, who we are. So these are the companies that 3 years ago decided to start up this new association, rather different compared to the others in Brussels, because we have a mix of companies that normally belong to other associations, but they came together because they are convinced that this European project of an electricity supergrid can be done. We are probably even more European than the European institutions. You will find out when I present you my slides. As you can see, we represent the whole supply chain of companies that would be necessary to do such a pan-European electricity grid. And we have spoken about the internal market. I fully agree that in 2014 we will still not have an internal market of gas or electricity. And we have to go back to 18 years ago when we had the first package, the first directive. It took 8 years to adopt the directive on electricity. It's a record in the European Union. It took 8 years or 9 to adopt the gas directive. And after 18 years, we still don't have the internal market. We will not have it next year. So when we say that today it would be impossible to go quicker and to go more European, if we look into today's situation, yes, I understand that it looks difficult, but we have to look backwards 18 years ago, and that was the objective of the member states, of the industry, and of course of the institutions. So we had the third packages. The objective was to have one market, competitive and integrated, and everybody being able to choose the supplier, reduce the electricity prices, of course, because it was the large consumers who really wanted to liberalize the electricity sector. 18 or 20 years ago, the electricity sector didn't want at all to get liberalized, but it was the large consumers who wanted it. And after the third packages, we still needed an infrastructure regulation, because, of course, with the packages, in any case, if you don't have any means to exchange and to trade the electricity, it wouldn't be possible. If you do many market coupling or wherever you want, you need the network. So after all this, still we have delays in building electricity network. 7 or 8 years for gas, I have heard, is nothing. You can get 30 years delays, 20 years delays. The interconnector between Norway and the Netherlands that was paid in 2 years took 17 years under the sea. Nobody could see it, but the regulatory frameworks of the two countries were so different that it took 17 years. And there was no public opposition because nobody can see the cable. So that's just one example. And I know that today there is also another project between the Netherlands and Denmark. It has to go through the waters of Germany, but because you have to stop the shipping going for 8 hours, the project so far is not going ahead. But maybe we'll have included Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands, it would go ahead. We just, blocked in 2 countries per 2 countries interconnections, even with the new infrastructure regulation. So that's why probably the 5 billion that we have in the connection facility will not be used, because it's business as usual, most of the PCIs. And of course, the trans-European networks is trans-European. You have to have at least 2 countries. But this we have been doing it for the last 50 years. Even with delays in the procedures, this is the normal thing. So it's not so innovative as to get all the 5 billion, which is, I think, a pity. So all these companies, which, as the colleague before from the gas sector said, we are an industry. We have also the foot on the floor. But we think it is possible, technologically speaking, and not regulatorily speaking, but it should be possible if there is political will to have the supergrid. So for us, supergrid is an European integration project, probably mainly economical, but it will bring much more benefits than only lower prices of electricity or gas to the European consumers. It follows the objectives of different policies in the European Union. We will be able to reduce the CO2 emissions. It's the only way to integrate all the renewables that Europe has, or with the neighboring countries. You can have more interconnectors, but if you want to really integrate all renewable possibilities, if the European Union decides to go ahead with that policy, that would be the only way with the supergrid. Still, for the internal electricity market, even if we want to burn gas and coal forever and ever, it would make sense because you can use all that capacity as backup or balancing for the whole of Europe. So you can still optimize the generation that exists today in Europe with a supergrid. So it's a no-regret investment anyway, the networks. We will reduce, of course, the dependence from third countries, because we will be using more and more local resources, plus the extra capacity that some member states have today and that are being paid with the capacity payments, which is not very intelligent for an internal market. You would be able to export those extra capacities. There wouldn't be any need for the capacity payments. Today is not possible, of course. Then we have all the innovation and all the technology to do that kind of network is European. There are only 3 companies in the world that are able to do it. It's ABB, it's Alstom, it's Siemens. You have seen they are belonging to the Friends of the Supergrid. Maybe in the future there will not be the 3 of them only, of course. There will be other companies in other countries that will copy or advance on those technologies, because United States, India, Brazil, Asia will need it. And we have the opportunity to really exploit it in Europe, sell it, and of course sell also skill employment opportunities to other countries. So for us, it's an industrial opportunity that we shouldn't miss. This is the definition that we give to the supergrid. So as you can see, it will facilitate the integration of large-scale renewable energy, of course, but at the same time, it's the way to, I wouldn't say improve, it's the way to realize also the European energy market, because you can optimize all generation possibilities in Europe, whatever is the choice of the member states. And this is how we see in one part of Europe, is one of the priority areas, and because there is no network at all, but there is more offshore wind coming in, and these countries are big countries like the UK and Germany, many consumers, many inhabitants, how to link those countries which are not linked today, plus they have wind potential that could be linked to the south of Europe potential of sun, especially. And instead of doing these interconnections between the offshore parks and each country its own ones, we would just propose to connect these generations between them. So you are connecting generation and the countries at the same time. Where there is no wind, and that can happen, at least you can use still that network, so you need less cable, and you pay for the network before, because you can be using the nuclear from France, or the coal coming from Greece for the time being, or from a Baltic country, if it would be connected. So you use the networks much more, and at the same time you are connecting the generation possibilities. And that, technologically speaking, is possible. So what we required, of course, the regulation on infrastructure is a very important step. I don't think for the type of projects that will come with that regulation, because the regulation and the situation in the member states is quite different from one to each other, but at least it gives this 3.5 years procedure. So either a project will go ahead or a project will be killed, but it will not last for 30 years just to build 60 kilometers of lines like between Spain and France. And then in the PCIs, we have seen that from the projects that were presented, for example, in the Iberian Peninsula to connect to other countries, the 3 of them have been dropped. So it remains only one between France and Spain, so the Iberian Peninsula will still remain under the 10% by 2020. In 2 years' time, probably it will be renovated, that list. But we need a really strong political support that the European Union really wants to go ahead with one internal market, generation optimized at European level, and then plan the network at European level. The top-down approach for us is fundamental. This is a technology that we could use to already start building this offshore wind grid in the North Sea. This is one example. It could be the Baltic Sea, it would be in the Atlantic, it could be in the south of Europe in another way, and it's all European. This is an example of a study that was financed by the European Commission, again giving the figures that Kitty was presented before, the benefits of connecting several countries at the same time, not only 2. It would go saving 14 billion, and with benefits adding more and more countries of even 21 billion. These are the figures of the Commission again. It's just to remind you that out of all the investments necessary, generation 500 billion, distribution of 400 billion, on transmission is 140. So it's the cheapest way, in any case, to go ahead. God, the 10 minutes have gone. This is the example of Belgium. They are trying to do this hub in the future, connecting all their offshore wind parks so that they can be connected afterwards with other member states. Germany is still very German. All of them are still very, German approach, like the Belgian one. But of course, if they try to connect all this in a hub, that would be a first step to then connect to the other member states. This is about the technology, to remind you that we have it, that in the future there will be these DC breakers or full bridges that will allow to have a meshed DC AC network in Europe. More factories are opening, so that creates more employment. And the next technology will be mainly DC. And my last one, this is the design of the future supergrid, a really meshed AC-DC all over Europe. Thank you for your attention.